Well, welcome everyone. My name is Robert Castro. I'm a professor in Theater and Dance Department, and I'm the current director of the Chicanx and Latinx Studies minor program here at UC San Diego. Really thrilled for our conversation today. It's part 2 of our Plática series, focusing on our CLS faculty that are in the STEM field here on campus, and in celebration of Latinx Heritage Month. Yesterday, we had an incredible conversation with Professors Rami Amaro, Professor of Chemistry and Biochemistry, Alex Fraño, Assistant Professor of Physics, and also Gilberto Mosqueda, Professor of Structural Engineering. I highly encourage you to see that episode as well. But today we actually have 3 other wonderful, extraordinary colleagues, guests, new friends from the STEM faculty. We have Javier Duarte, Professor in Physics. We have Olivia Graeve, the extraordinaire, from the Professor of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, and Julio Barreiro, also from the Department of Physics. So really thrilled to have an informal, intimate conversation with them today. I'll be introducing them, giving their bio, and spending a few minutes with each of them, asking them their journey, their story, how they came to UCSD, how they became part of the excitement of the STEM field, and then maybe talk about their research, and we'll kind of jump in from there. A couple announcements and thank yous I want to begin with. I want to thank Frank Silva, the Associate Vice Chancellor of EDI here on campus, for his support and efforts in making this filming happen for UCTV, UC San Diego TV, but also for the platform Mi Universidad on campus, which is part of the extension, UCSD extension here, part of kind of partnership with the community. So I'm really thrilled that that will be part of that platform. So, without any further ado, we'll jump into our conversation, and I'm just going to kind of just go down the line here, and I'll just begin with Javier. So I don't know Javier. We only have been we know each other during E-versions or E-introductions, so we're meeting in person, so I'm really thrilled to meet you and get to know you more, Javier. So your bio is, Javier is an assistant professor of physics at the University of California, San Diego, and a member of the CMS Collaboration and the CERN Large Hadron Collider, yes? Yeah. Before joining UCSD, he was a Letterman postdoctoral fellow at Fermilab. He received his Ph.D. in physics at Caltech and his B.S. in physics and mathematics at MIT. His research group works on Higgs-boson measurements and searches for new physics at particle colliders, real-time AI on FPGAs, and geometric deep learning for particle physics. Professor Duarte has received a Department of Energy Early Career Award for real-time AI in particle physics. Wow, that's impressive. That's a mouthful.
Yeah, and I apologize, particle physicists love acronyms.
Yes.
And so you just can't write anything without it being riddled with acronyms.
Well, welcome to UC San Diego. We're full of the same thing, right? CLS, LOS, RRC, so I'm with you on that. T and D, so yes, we love that. So I'll just say, thank you for being here, Javier. And again, like I said, I don't know you, so I'm really just curious to get to know your story. So maybe I'm just inviting you to share your journey, where you come from, and how you got to UC San Diego.
Sure, yeah. So my family, actually have family on both sides of the border in Colombia and Venezuela. And we came over when I was fairly young. My mom is kind of an entrepreneur, so she wanted to start businesses and really was seeking like better opportunities for her, children. And so she came, she was doing lots of different jobs, including like, it's funny to think about it, like travel agent, cell phone, retailer, and really like catering actually to Latin American community. This was in Long Island, so it's like in the center of Long Island where there's actually tons of Latin Americans and Hispanic Americans, and so like her business was like the one that they went to just get help and service in Spanish and everything else. But yeah, so I kind of got interested.
So is that where you grew up, in Long Island?
On Long Island, yeah. Sorry.
Where'd you go to high school?
A high school called Longwood High School.
Yes, I know it.
Okay, you do know.
Yeah, I do, believe it or not.
Yeah, so right in the middle of the island. It's actually fairly large and has, some good programs, but yeah, it's also, maybe not the best school, overall.
But can I go back for a second? I'm curious how you came from Venezuela and Colombia to Long Island. What was that experience?
Yeah, so we had, as is usually the case, kind of family friends that had already settled there. So it was easy for my family to move there. My mom, my sister, and myself actually to move there because we had a little community that we could already talk to, and then people. And my mom actually started a business with one of the family friends. So. That was really the connection, and also there's a very large Colombian American community in Queens.
That's true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And so then how did you get into science? Does that something happen when you were in high school? What excites you about it in that regard?
Yeah, I think so. I think in high school I remember reading sort of these popular science books like Brian Greene's The Elegant Universe, and maybe some of Richard Feynman's stories about his life that also interject things about particle physics and the kind of physics he did, and just getting excited about that as a possibility of, oh wow, people can do this and get paid to think about these really deep fundamental questions about the universe or about how things are made, what things are made up of. And that was exciting. I think the other thing I was really interested in at a young age was computers. We always had some kind of computer in the house, especially given my mom's business was either travel agency or later now she does taxes. There's always some kind of and I remember being back then it was super slow and everything and things would break, but it was a lot lower level, so you could actually play around on the command line and stuff. So I think that was also one thing that piqued my interest in terms of computing, which actually turns out to be a big part of my job these days. So I'd say it was a combination of things. And some members of my family are also engineers. I feel that's the more typical path that you might take in South America is if you have this inclination for math or science, you maybe are more taught well, that's great, but you should also make sure you can make money. And so engineer, that's the thing. Mm-hmm. And the story is actually very similar. A lot of other of my friends who came from South America, they have kind of a similar story that, yeah, my mom wanted me to be an engineer. And I was fortunate that my mom was fairly supportive, and my family was fairly supportive of even though I wanted to pursue something as esoteric maybe as particle physics, they were still, supportive of it.
It's so interesting bringing up engineering as this kind of a pathway, because yesterday in our conversation, a couple of the guests also mentioned they started engineering as well before they got into physics or chemistry. And it was interesting because they were talking about it as the pathway to kind of having a really kind of modest and a kind of substantial, kind of way of living, right? That was something that they could do versus something a little bit more challenging in terms of making a living and having a kind of quality of life. That was something very important to them and their family to make sure that they have that in place for them. But I'll to say, I'm curious how
Don't get me wrong, engineering is very important and hugely impactful. But
no, they said the same thing. Don't get me wrong as well. But it was just interesting that was always a starting point for many of them, and then they're in this other place, whether it's physics, chemistry, et cetera.
Yeah.
That was the starting place. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to the passion of the individual person.
Yeah, sure.
What are you more passionate about?
Right.
And yeah, there are many, people who are more passionate about the engineering side of
sure.
things. And I also find myself on some days I care more about the engineering aspects of my work, and on some other days more about the science aspects. And there really are, you can't have one without the other.
Sure. Yeah. And so then, Javier, you continue your undergraduate education going to MIT. I mean, that's pretty impressive and really extraordinary. I'm just curious, what's it like being, what was the experience of being, a Latino on MIT campus, in Cambridge, and we met yesterday Gilberto Mosqueda. He did some of his master's work there as well, and talking about, missing food and family and wonderful things. I'm just curious, what was your experience like being there? Because again, we're focusing the conversation today of, Latinos in STEM, right? And that's part of it, and these kind of elite kind of, focused programs around the country, and how we find, as Stephanie, who's here, how do we find our resilience? How do we find our place there? How do we keep our focus and our passion alive when there's challenges, being away from our families, or, not near our cultura, et cetera? I'm just curious your experience.
I was, again, really fortunate that I was able to find kind of a community of other, not just Hispanic Americans, but also group of maybe outcasts, group of other friends that in physics that we really supported each other. And a lot of us were first generation college students and didn't really know about the structure of how do I make it so that I can get research opportunities? How do I make it so I can get into graduate school if I want to do physics? Not really knowing those structures, but kind of together we were able to figure it out and actually help each other. I remember, and so I had a few friends that were, we would send each other research opportunities, we should all apply to this. And then we would read each other's statements and give feedback on each other's
So peer support.
Yeah, it was a lot of peer support. And that was really important because, I didn't really know what to expect or how to navigate higher education. And so I think that it came from talking to peers that really helped me understand. And also they had, really awesome clubs. SHIP was actually the biggest one that I was a part of, that did lots of things and brought food, from people's cultures. And so that was another way to kind of connect back to home. Mm-hmm. And luckily I wasn't too far from home. I mean, I was far enough, which is it's good, but not too far.
You take Metro North and get there.
Yeah, it was the Amtrak
bus.
The bus.
Oh my God! Peter Pan. What did you take?
Exactly. Yeah,
I know the line.
It was one of those buses. Usually they go through Chinatown. But those were the days.
To Boston, from Chinatown to Chinatown.
Yeah, exactly.
I know the bus very well. Exactly. That's really awesome. So tell me how you got to UC San Diego. Can you keep your journey going for us in terms of, so you finished your undergraduate work, your other studies, and then how did you come to UC San Diego? I'm also curious, what's it like being here as a Latino in the STEM department at physics? What that experience is like for you, with your colleagues, but also with your students, et cetera, and what you're interested in bringing here.
Yeah. After I finished, I knew I wanted to do particle physics. I actually had a research opportunity at CERN, and that really once I got to actually go to Geneva, Switzerland, where the Large Hadron Collider is, I was oh, this is it. This is what I want to do. And I was able to kind of talk to a professor at Caltech, and they seemed interested in kind of the same research I was interested in. Who became my advisor, Maria Sparapoulou, and she was really really helpful, and also just had a big group that I learned a lot from. And at the time we were doing searches for new kinds of particles that are related to symmetry called supersymmetry. Nowadays this is a little bit out of I don't want to say out of style because, well, we've excluded a lot of them. So now it becomes a little bit harder to motivate to keep searching for that particular kind of theory. Then I went and did a postdoc at Fermilab, and this was really cool because there was a specific outreach component that was part of the postdoc, and so I was one of the things I ended up doing was directing the Saturday morning physics program. And actually, we had one edition in Spanish. So it was a way to try to bring in the Hispanic community, especially because Fermilab is it's in Batavia, Illinois, which is right next to Aurora, Illinois, which is one of the most, the Hispanic population's, enormous. And really, we never saw many people coming to Fermilab to take advantage of the opportunities that the lab had for outreach and for things. And one of the reasons is maybe because a lot of the people that come here, maybe their parents, they don't connect with that these things are available, or necessarily for them. And so that was one way we wanted to like try to improve the outreach. So then I started at UCSD like 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, and so far it's been really excellent. I think there's a lot of other faculty in the department that are really supportive, and actually a lot of other Hispanic faculty, and it's been really nice actually getting to meet everyone and to kind of work together on different projects. One that kind of comes up that we've done recently was like going to Barrio Logan and doing the Science and Art Expo, and that was really fun just to like go and just kind of tell people about the kinds of stuff that's again happening in their backyard, happening at UCSD, and say like these are the kinds of careers you can pursue.
Incredible. So I have lots of many more questions for you. We'll fold you in as we continue, but I want to meet our other guests so we can kind of open up the conversation collectively. Just going down our beautiful line here, we have the one and only Professor Graeve, and I'll read her bio. So Professor Olivia Graeve joined UC San Diego in 2012 and is currently the Jacobs Faculty Scholar and Professor in Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, Director of the Cali Baja Center for Resilient Materials and Systems, and Director of the Materials Science and Engineering Program. She holds a Ph.D. in Materials Science and Engineering from the University of California, Davis, and a Bachelor of Science in Structural Engineering from UC San Diego. So she's an alum, hooray. Her area of research focuses on the design and processing of new materials for extreme environments, including extremes of temperature, pressure, and radiation. Professor Graeve has been involved in many activities related to the recruitment and retention of women and Hispanic students in science and engineering, and has received several prestigious awards, including the Presidential Award for Excellence in Science, Mathematics, and Engineering Mentoring in 2020. She has been inducted into the Tijuana Walk of Fame, the Mexican Academy of Engineering, the Mexican Academy of Sciences, the Latin American Academy of Sciences, and has been named Fellow of the American Ceramic Society and of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Olivia, that's a mouthful as well, super impressive. And of course we know each other over the years, and just to acknowledge, Professor Graeve has been such an incredible supporter and a really dedicated community member of CLS, so huge thanks on that part.
Of course, you're welcome.
But Olivia, please, same question I'll ask you. You have a mythical kind of story on campus. A lot of us, the Latinos and Chicanos on campus, we know of you. You're very celebrated in our community, rightly so, just from your bio, but other things that we know beyond what you do on campus here. I'd love to invite you to share your journey of how you started your path towards the STEM field and how you eventually came to UC San Diego.
So I think going back to high school has been what we've been doing. I grew up in Tijuana, so right across the border from San Diego. I was good in math and I loved chemistry, starting from like junior high. And that's actually quite common, right? You're sort of good at that, and then so people try to promote engineering and say, oh, you're good with math, you should go do engineering. But in my case, it ended up being engineering, in fact, structural engineering here at UCSD, because I had experiences when I was in high school related to a lot of forced migration because of difficulties in the south of Mexico. A lot of people were immigrating through Tijuana to come to the United States. And many of them were not able to cross. And we're talking about most undocumented crossings, no? And so they were living in slums, in communities that were basically cardboard communities. And since people were telling me I should be an engineer, and I saw that, and I spent a lot of time in those communities, weekends and weekends and weekends, I figured, I could build houses. I think that that's something I could do. And so that was the motivation, really. When I got here to UCSD, I liked structural engineering, but I actually found out that it was not really for me. In the end, it's like, no, I don't think I like building houses. And I started doing undergraduate research in a material science laboratory here with a professor that has since passed. She passed away about 3 years ago. But she was my mentor and eventually, obviously, my colleague because she was here when I got hired at UCSD.
Can we name her? Because she sounds extraordinary.
Joanna McKittrick. She was a faculty in MAE in my department.
I only want to name her because a question I'll kind of follow up with you also, but I mean, we can keep going by all means, but just something to consider in a few moments. Your role as a woman in the STEM field,
sure.
And also Latina. And so I think it's important to acknowledge the generation ahead, right, that actually, supported you and actually gave you that foundation for your future steps.
Well, that was definitely her.
Yeah.
Her and then another female faculty member that is now retired. She's now an emeritus professor, Jan Talbot. So they were collaborators, and I started working for Joanna and obviously for Jan as well because they were collaborating on the project. That was awesome. It definitely moved my interest into material science, and that's what I did for my Ph.D. at UC Davis. It's interesting that my own experience at UC San Diego back then, which we're talking early 90s, was extremely positive because I also found a community of support, which was also SHIP, the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. I was a member of SHIP here at UCSD back then, and that was like a little cocoon of protection against the microaggressions of the world. It was awesome. I have no bad experiences whatsoever from UC San Diego when I was an undergrad. I had a great mentor in research, and I had great friends. And so going to UC Davis was a little bit of a shocker because now in graduate school we're talking about no Latinos basically in engineering and material science. I was the only Latina, I mean male or female. I was the only Hispanic in my program. And that was interesting to me because I had not had that experience at UCSD. And so I started doing stuff to fix that. I started getting engaged with SHIP at the national level to promote graduate education. So together with a group of other graduate students from other universities, including MIT actually, because SHIP at MIT has been very strong for a very long time. We started building these graduate prep programs at the national level for graduate students. And that eventually morphed into programs also to get junior faculty, graduate students into junior faculty positions. That became the Faculty Institute and the Graduate Institute at the national level. That was great. Back when I was really involved with that, because I am not doing that anymore. I'll tell you why later. It was like a transition for me moving to UC San Diego and deciding that I wanted to do more of the local, regional, border stuff. And all of those programs were so very well established at the SHIP national level. So I was like, I don't need to do this anymore. Others can start doing that. And that is indeed what happened. So right now there's all kinds of other awesome people, including alumni of those programs who were graduate students when they went through it, and now they're faculty at different institutions. So to see that is really amazing. And so at some point when I was the chair of all of those efforts, I pretty much knew all of the Latino engineering faculty in the United States, every single one of them.
I believe it.
That's no longer the case. I don't know all Latino engineering faculty in the US anymore. But back then I did, and I wrote 2 papers about that, by the way. So those came out in 2018, one paper, and then another one just this year on the Latino engineer academic kind of environment. That came out in ACS Omega, so it's actually a chemistry journal.
Yeah. And what did you share in those papers? I'm just curious.
What is that?
What did you share in those papers?
The statistics. The statistics, the numbers, the percentages, all of that stuff. And then I did not come to UCSD as an assistant professor. This was not my first academic position. I went to the University of Nevada, Reno first. I was an assistant professor there. And then I left the year I got tenure. And then I went to New York I was in upstate New York at Alfred University, which is a very famous ceramic engineering school. That's my area, ceramic engineering. And I was there for about 4.5 years. And I left when I got promoted to full professor. Every time I got promoted, I seem to...
You find something better?
Yeah, I kind of left.
Right when they want you, you go somewhere else?
Yes, yes. When I left UNR, I was purposely looking for other opportunities. I wanted to move to an institution that had better research programs. And that was purposeful. But moving to UC San Diego was not. I was extremely happy at Alfred University. It's an awesome place. It's an amazing place. But I got a phone call from Joanna and from Enrique Luco, who's an now retired professor from structural engineering. Him in particular, he said, we have a position, you have to apply. So these are all people I had taken undergraduate classes from, and I'm like, yeah, of course. This is San Diego. This is home. Like, I would be coming back home. I have lots of family on both sides of the border. In San Diego and Tijuana, like all 500 people were happy that I was interviewing here. When I told my mom that I had been called and that I was going to come interview, she has an altar for the Virgen de Guadalupe. So Our Lady of Guadalupe altar at home. And she put 10 votive candles for 5 months. She had the votive
Through the interview process, yeah.
Through the whole process. And then to this day, she says that, you know, La Virgen answered her prayers.
Wow.
My response to that is, yeah, Ma. That's why I got hired. Because she had 10 votive candles running for 6 months. But, you know, this is, she believes in that. She thinks that it promoted this, and this is great.
I just acknowledge, I think that's such a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that, because it just reminds me of like how important the kind of sacred and the divine is in our worlds and our culture, right? And these kind of, you know, as I said, we're doing Day of the Dead in a couple of weeks, but nonetheless, this kind of cosmic, however you want to frame it, you know, worldview. You know, the great David Carrasco, this wonderful professor at the Divinity School in Harvard, talks about, he's a Mesoamerican scholar, and he talks about our cosmovision as Latinos and as ancient American holders of these wisdoms and worldviews that actually incorporate sciences. As we know, you know, the Mayans invented zero, right? And so we know these are part of our worldview as Latinos and Chicanx people here on campus. But also part of that is holistic in the true sense that there's also, you know, a space and a kind of a thread that weaves through it, which is the sacred and the divine and the cosmic, that of these other kind of realities that are part of our ancestors, that we bring through us, that we share through generations concretely, or just people that we have in our DNA that we're carrying with us as we're setting those seeds for future generations as well. So it's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I totally am like moved by that story.
Well, like I said, I got hired because the Lady of Guadalupe responded to my mom's
Awesome.
prayer.
We got you. Thank you, Virgen. We got you.
I have some requests.
Yes.
What did you say?
I have some requests.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Just, you know, my mom, yes, she has a straight line to
Clearly.
to this.
Or at least she has a lot of votives. She has a lot of velas for us to hand out.
Yes, that's right. little veladoras that she runs. So I came here 10 years ago. And I'm never leaving, because this is home. This is the transition that I made from all my activities at the national level with SHIP, and thinking more about the border and regional efforts. And this is where the Cali Baja Center for Resilient Materials and Systems comes from. It's a binational center with very large educational programs, including this program Enlace that both Julio and Javier have hosted students from the Enlace program in their labs. It's a summer research program that is binational. So this summer, I had 185 students in the program. Wow. from Mexico and from the US. To me, this is like an incredibly important activity. Aside from my research and all of these things that I value tremendously, the opening research opportunities for Latino students from both sides of the border is very important. And on the U.S. side, it's not just Latinos. Open to other minorities, Black students, Native American students, some of the more marginalized Asian communities, from the point of view of socioeconomic acquisition power. You know, the Vietnamese American, for example, Cambodian Americans, Laos, these other South Asian countries. I have students from those populations as well in the program. It's grown a lot, 185 this summer. I started in 2013 with 5. So this is how much it has grown. And it's both high school and college students. And next summer, for the first time, I'm going to accept also graduate students, master's level students, to get them to then come here for their PhDs or postdocs. It's a lot of responsibility. So I move into the dorms with them for the 7 weeks of the program. So for the last few years during summer, I live on campus. And it's really fun. It's really
Where
fun.
on campus? What housings do you use?
Oh, they give us different dorms depending on the year. So this year we were in the new 6th College dorms.
Very swanky.
which was beautiful.
Sure.
Yeah, they're great. They're great dorms, the new ones for 6th. But we've lived in Muir, we've lived in Revelle, we've lived in Warren. It's like they move us.
So it's a true living and learning experience then.
Yeah. It really is. So I keep telling my colleagues that, you know, during the summer, maybe at midnight, they're going to see me in my pajamas walking to the library or something like this. But it's great. And yeah, that's what I'm doing here at UCSD. And you know, it's like breaking borders, you know, tearing down walls. And I do it also for my research. My research area is on materials for space applications. There is no greater frontier than space.
Sure.
And of course, I'm a fan of Star Wars and Star Trek and everything else that has to do with all that.
That's amazing. I just to acknowledge really quickly, you know, you kind of have this mythological reputation on campus. You should know,
really
Olivia. I'm just there's this wonderful kind of part of your history that people share is your actually living and commuting from Tijuana to come to campus, right? As a person, can you talk about that? Like, that's an extraordinary commitment to your own kind of passion. And your own kind of journey, and just the amount of effort and just time, of course, as we know, crossing the border, but to come to school as an undergrad, right? Waking up, crossing the border to come to classes, et cetera. Can you just talk about what that was like as a young person and your commitment to that?
Well, so the border is something that I've lived with all my life. No? I grew up in Tijuana. I used to cross the border when I was young, 9 years old, without any documents, just to buy milk. So you get to the border at that time, it's like, what are you doing, little girl? Oh, I'm just, you know, I have to go to it's the Dairy Mart, which is, by the way, why there's a Dairy Mart Road. That was actually a milk facility, like fresh milk.
Dairy.
Yeah, it was a dairy
farm.
Dairy farm.
There you
go. There's a Dairy Farm Road down there in San Isidro.
Sure.
Yeah? So cross the border. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna get milk. Oh yeah, go ahead. No papers. It was you're just one of the locals. Of course, everything changed after 9/11. There was no way that kind of porosity could continue. And so the crossing every day, I don't really think it was a big deal. From door to door, it would take me 1 hour.
Wow.
I think there are people with longer commutes that don't cross borders that are more than 1 hour.
Yeah, I live in North County, and sometimes it can take me 90 minutes, let me tell you.
Sometimes it's like longer than 1 hour.
Sure.
Back then, it was like a different world at the border. It was a 1 hour door to door. 10 minutes from my house to the border, about 20 minutes at the border, and half an hour from San Isidro to La Jolla. No big deal. Lots of people do it, both for work and for job, and school. I think that it is more difficult now. There's no question that the border can be very, very long now. I live now in San Diego, so I don't do that. But back then, I think it was just a part of life. My mom encouraged it, of course. She was a single mom with 5 children, and she encouraged education. So for her, it was like, this is something that we needed to do. And we did. All 5 of us went to college in the United States. And all 5 of us now live here in San Diego. So it's really great. Again, family, you know. Sure. And if you think about my own family and heritage with respect to where we come from, we are many generations California, Baja California. My family was here before California was part of the U.S. My grandfather was born in San Diego in 1917 at the Naval Hospital. Wow. That was a total accident, by the way, that he was born. So in Tijuana in 1917, there were no hospitals. And in fact, regionally, in the entire San Diego-Tijuana region, there was only one hospital in San Diego, the Naval Hospital. And the partera, the midwife, told my great-grandfather that there was a difficult birth, that they needed to be taken to the hospital. So they got on their horse cart and they crossed the border, which at that time was no border, and they came to the Naval Hospital. So he was born in 1917 in San Diego. Pure accident. This is how it goes in the border region.
Wow.
And so the schools that I went to in Tijuana, K-12, are the schools that I started with for my Enlace program in terms of recruitment of the Mexican side of the students. But now it has grown. It's a nationwide program all over Mexico and all over the U.S. Yeah. But I started in 2013 with 5 high school girls from the high school that I went to. Mm-hmm. This is how it began.
Extraordinary. Olivia, I have many more questions to ask you, and again, about your social justice roots of seeing the housing, kind of your interest in structural engineering and how you came, really amazing things in terms of your social justice action, what you're doing and still continuing to do now in your projects like Enlace and all these extraordinary development for retention for professors to new students. Just amazing. I want to hear more about that. I have actually some questions about when I hear ceramic, I hear art and art, kind of artistry, but you're talking about materials, I think, in terms of ceramic. But I want to ask you more about how the arts kind of like plays out in that, in those materials, et cetera. But without further ado, I want to bring in beautiful Julio. We need to find out him, who is this incredible person who has also, I should just say, is a wonderful new member of our CLS community. And since he joined last year, he's been a really wonderful, active voice in our conversations, along with Olivia. And I'm inviting Javier also to become part of our CLS affiliated faculty. But I really appreciate over the year that we've got to know each other, Julio, our wonderful conversations and the efforts that you're doing, and even planning this event. You were really critical in the success of all of the participants. So thank you so much for that. But I wanted to read and let people know who you are through your bio that you shared with us.
So, a lot smaller than.
What's that?
A lot smaller than.
Not at all. Not at all.
It's incredible.
So Julio Barreiro is from Guerrero and grew up Guerrero, Mexico. Grew up in public housing project in Acapulco, Mexico. Inspired by a junior high teacher, he found his passion for science. Through hard work and focus, he found himself the recipient of scholarships that opened up a world of opportunity in physics. CERN, CERN, you guys call it CERN, am I saying it correctly? Yeah. Fulbright, European Union, and Max Planck Society fellowships. Today, he runs a lab at UC San Diego focused on quantum science and technology. Julio, thank you. I'm sure this is like, it may be brief, but you are definitely not that, for sure, in the work and the tremendous efforts that you're doing here on campus. So again, our same question that we'll just ask you, amazing story here. I'm curious, your upbringing, your journey, where it started, and then how you got into STEM perhaps, and then how you came to UC San Diego.
Yeah, so it all started, I went to high school in Acapulco, where education is not necessarily very, very, very good. But I had a very, very good high school physics professor, first year of junior high, which we loved him. He was incredible. He was really communicating the passion for physics.
Should we honor him? What is his name?
Fernando Martinez. Mm-hmm. He was small. He was actually Asian Mexican. He was really good at teaching physics. We loved him, and he was small. We would call him Atomo, the atom.
Sure.
but he was fine with it. We would even sometimes in the evenings we're hanging out with friends. We would stay by his house and just chat. And then I also had other professors in biology who also helped me with a lot of computers. Where I grew up, my friends growing up, it's a project housing, so it was difficult to imagine in the developing country. So all my friends either had passed away, were in jail, or are undocumented here. So later on, I went to college in Mexico City, which was quite a challenge because I came from not very good preparation. So the first 2 years of college were tremendously hard. So when I teach here, I can relate to students who are struggling, that they don't have opportunity to take physics in high school. So I understand perfectly how they have to put a lot more effort into to improve their grades, and it's really great to see how over the quarters they improve and they go up. And as I tell them, keep going, all that hard work eventually is gonna pay out because you're used to this hard work and you're gonna just take off. Then I was lucky to have a opportunity to be at CERN. So I was a summer student a long time ago. That was an incredible opportunity, eye-opening. And I had a chance to get a fellowship from the State Department, Fulbright, to do my Ph.D. here in the US, which I first went to Columbia. They didn't have quantum science back then, so then I moved to Illinois, where they had quantum science and where my wife was. Then I had a very good opportunity.
So Columbia in New York? You were at
Columbia in New York,
oh,
yes. I had a good opportunity in helping in parent-teacher conferences in high school. And that's when it clicked, when I would talk to parents and the teachers and understand a little bit of misunderstanding of cultures. And for me, the parents, I mean, they look like my friends. So I would, because my friends were also undocumented here. So I would understand their perspective. I would understand how culturally is different, how we would be more sensitive about certain reactions, and I could have a chance to explain to them. It's not you. It's how things are sometimes, and also talk to the teachers and explain that, you know, that does it. So it would help. Like it would be like a bridge, because I was a grad student, which was already like kind of integrated in the academia. So it was a very good opportunity. Yeah, then I went to Austria for a postdoc, and then Germany for another postdoc. So after many postdocs, PhD, you eventually get to such a great place and competitive like UC San Diego. And from the beginning, Olivia was there to help and to guide us and to support us. And I've been incredibly happy to see that now I can connect with all the undocumented parents that are here, understand their perspective. I know where they grew up, what they were facing, and what drove them to come here, and how they are pushing their kids to study. And so San Diego's a unique place to achieve that.
So can you talk more about, I'm just curious, I'd love to know like the moment that you decided to kind of dedicate your life to this kind of STEM field. I'm really excited. Professor Adam, he sounds incredible, Tomo, but I'm just curious, was your family, were the family of people interested in science? Was Star Wars something that like triggered you? We said Star Trek, etc. I'm just curious, like how these affinities, right, become, into our realities, that turn to passions, become into our life work, right? I'm just kind of curious how that was for you, Julio.
Yeah, no, my mom is a seamstress, and my dad was in construction. So I like physics from what the teacher was teaching.
From your classes? From
my classes. And then my dad would take me to the construction, and I would go help and go up and down, and so I would see the physics playing out on the building.
You could use your skills on site.
Yeah. And that's what I got very hands-on, and then I took some workshops in being an electrician and plumbing, and so that's how I got. I didn't know there was something like physics. I just like physics, and then when I was in advanced high school, I saw that this college has something called a physicist. I didn't know there were PhDs or masters. I had no idea.
Or positions at UC San Diego.
I had no idea about the academic path. It was all until I got to college in Mexico City that I said, so you do physics and then you do masters, and so yeah, it was more like this professor and
Can I ask you about that journey? Because that's interesting. Because I love your kind of humble beginnings you're sharing as you go with public housing and very modest family beginnings, but then going to the capital, right? Going to Mexico City to UNAM. Is that where you went, or where did you go? Yeah. And so, like, what was even that like? I mean, because many of us in the States, right, grew up, in certain places around the country, and we go to these really wonderful schools, MIT, Columbia, et cetera, and even that's a challenge, right? So I'm just curious, within the own country of Mexico, what was that experience going from Surf City, right? tourist Central, you could argue, right? Because I asked you before, do you surf?
No, so I started surfing, but I'm not good at it. So I don't say I surf. I say I jump on the
Perfect.
board.
So, but coming from Acapulco and then going to a really rigorous university in a program that is really challenging, I imagine, coming from a high school like many of us that are not preparing us for college, as you mentioned. That was my experience as well. It just thrown to the wolves, right? And so I'm really so moved by your support of your current students. But that was me all those years ago when I was undergrad as well. And so I imagine that was comparable to your experience going to UNAM as well. And maybe you can talk about that a little bit. What was it
so
like?
When I went to UNAM, I was very lucky to have professors who would actually support me. So at UNAM, I had a chance to, they saw I was working hard and I would pick up on the classes. Then they would hire me as an instruction assistant. So that was a safety net that I would have as a economic support to continue studies. And of course, at some point, even the teachers, one teacher had to loan me some money to because I had no money to pay rent or eat. So it was really the professors who were supporting me, helping me. So with my students, I feel that now is my time to do the same and help them succeed. Yeah.
You're doing that. Can you talk a little bit about the program that you have? I know you have the Young Physicists program. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so this is a program that it was already in the physics department. And the idea of the program is you have high school students that come once a month to the department and they can play and experience the undergrad labs. So there is a subset of experiments. All this is actually all work done by the graduate students in physics who set this up. And we get one faculty member give a talk at the end, and then have pizza with the kids and discuss.
And who are the students that are involved in the project? Who are the students that come to the young people?
So traditionally, so far, it's been from high schools nearby. My goal now is to actually either bring our program over to other underserved high schools that will have a stronger impact, or bring the students over to the department. We have also every year lab tours, so we take the kids around all the labs, and they quite enjoy it.
And what do they want to know from you when the kids come? I'm just curious what the questions they ask you.
Oh, so we do quantum experiments. So they are curious about quantum science, how the small world and how entanglement, for example, that just got the Nobel Prize in physics, entanglement of particles of light goes. And so they get very intrigued and puzzled and interested in understanding how these not so intuitive experiences happen in these experiments. Yeah.
Perfect. I'm going to kind of circle back to Javier for a second, and I'd just love to maybe ask you guys, because I know you guys are so passionate about your research, and you all are so singular in what you do. I'm just love to know exactly like what is your passion right now in terms of the research that you're working on. Maybe you can share what your research focuses on, and maybe a project that is like on hot off the presses, so to speak. So Javier, I know you're into colliding. We talked about that when we met on Zoom, which I really appreciate our conversation. That was really wonderful to meet you in that way. But I'm just curious, can you talk about the work that you do, and then also maybe a project that you're currently working on?
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, the big project, it's not just me, it's really a collaboration of thousands of physicists and engineers that we're working on is, so 10 years ago, we discovered this particle, the Higgs boson. It's related to how other particles acquire mass. It's actually related to a field, the Higgs field, that kind of fills the universe. And these other particles essentially push against that field and that resistance, that inertia that they feel, that's what gives rise to mass. But there's other weird properties of the Higgs boson that we want to observe to like confirm that it is what we expect it to be. One is the fact that the Higgs is kind of expected to interact with itself in a way that's like kind of unique. So we expect it to basically be able to split into two other Higgs bosons. So like, one Higgs boson is going along, and then it just suddenly becomes two. So like, what kind of object in everyday, life does that? It's a very unique thing. And we want to measure the strength of this, like how often this happens, what is the rate. But it's really, really rare. Even when we're talking about colliding particles at the highest energies, we're already talking about really, really rare things. This is rare among that rarity. So it's just ultra rare. And so we need to like collide these protons, billions of times just to have a chance of seeing this thing once, And so we do this over the course of, years. So this is like going to be a 10-year program to try to measure this. And one reason why it's interesting is because it's actually related to, it may be related to essentially how the stability of the universe, actually. So something related to like the fate of the universe, like how things might evolve in the future. Because of this fundamental parameter kind of controls other things too. It's related to other facts of the evolution of the universe. And so we're really interested in measuring this. And one of the ways that we can try to like grab these like really rare things from this like mountain or this avalanche of data, most of which is uninteresting, is to use machine learning, is to use like big data methods from big data, methods from, trying to classify these events, again, these really rare events from this like, mountain of background. And so a lot of what my group does is try to develop new kinds of machine learning techniques and not just take the ones that work for computer vision. There's lots of AI probably in the news that you've heard of or others have heard of that work really well for vision or natural language, but particle physics data is really unique. It's not really like either of those two things. And so we have to kind of adapt the methods and think of new methods that are take into account the like symmetries or the laws of physics in ways that are like unique. And so that's a lot of what my group is working on. And ultimately, it's to really better understand like the universe at this subatomic scale.
Amazing. Yeah. I'm just curious. Your lab is in Switzerland, right? In Geneva, or where?
So the experiment itself is in Switzerland, and two of my grad students are there now. Actually, one of them is helping take shifts during data. We just restarted data taking, so is actually there helping to take data for one of the systems called the trigger system, which is, it's called that because it's like the trigger on a camera. It's the system that decides when to save an event, to record the data. Because there's just so much data, we can't actually save it all. So we actually save only a small fraction of it that we think is the most interesting fraction. And so that's a really critical system. And so sometimes he'll be on call, like, at night and stuff, and has to respond to, if there's problems. And so, so the actual experiments in Switzerland, the LHC tunnel is 27 kilometers in circumference. It borders actually both. It's on the border between Switzerland and France. So actually, especially during COVID, there was a lot of issues actually getting across the border
sure.
and things. But normally it's fully open. But we, of course, because it's so computational, because we can transfer data. We have, one of the things that UCSD and the San Diego Supercomputer Center works a lot on is like networking and, being able to transfer data over large distances. So we, also are transferring the data all the time to the US, to Fermilab near Chicago, to San Diego, to our computing centers. And so we're all able, basically, all of the collaborators all over the world are able to analyze this data like from anywhere. And so that's what we do partially. So part of my lab is like here working on like analyzing this data or building prototype systems for this trigger, and then some of them are at CERN.
Wow. And so how many grad students do you have?
Right now, 3 that are more senior, and then 3 that are interested in joining the lab that are first years. So sort of quite a handful already.
And what's your just relationship? I'm just curious if some people want to take classes with you, like what kind of opportunity would they be able to have interacting with you?
Yeah, I'm always open to new undergraduate researchers. So there's you can contact me by email or on my website. And then in terms of courses, I'm teaching a computational physics course this year in the winter and the spring, and so that's another opportunity. Yeah, like we'll definitely touch on some of the things I talked about today.
To hang out with you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Javier. So same thing for you. I'm curious, Olivia. I know, again, you have these legendary kind of things that circle you. I understand you do like work with NASA, and your things are experiments in space. I understand. I don't know. Can you maybe enlighten us on what you research and maybe a project that you're working on right now?
Sure. So I work on materials for extreme environments, and most of them end up being materials that are ceramics. So materials for ultra-high temperature applications. I have a project right now that is for the development of ceramics that are carbon-based ceramics for ballistic or re-entry vehicle applications. So when you have a re-entry vehicle and it's coming down, I think we're all used to seeing the space shuttle coming down and getting really, really, really hot.
Sure.
So if you think about the new coatings or protection systems, that's one thing that we're doing, working on those kinds of materials. I also work a lot with sensors, like detector materials, scintillator materials as they're known, for radiation. So radiation environments, which are also obviously space. So radiation in Mars is much stronger than Mars, the moon. There is no protective atmosphere. Like we really have to appreciate our atmosphere, by the way. It's a good thing to have. So we are protected. Our ionosphere protects us from a lot of the space radiation. But you have to think about those kinds of radiations environments in Mars or the moon. And if we eventually are going to be living on Mars, for example, which will happen eventually, then you have to protect against radiation. So detectors of neutrons, neutron detector materials. I have a big project on neutron detectors now, and gamma ray detectors as well, which are difficult to make because gamma rays are very energetic. So they would rather just destroy wherever they go instead of being detected and somehow counted, right? The whole counting process of radiation. Yeah, that's some of the stuff that we're doing in my lab.
Can I just follow up on what I was asking before? Because when I was reading your bio and I was preparing for this, and I saw the word ceramic in there, and my world went to like the arts and crafts, kind of that.
So
and
I
I'm just wondering where that is
love
part.
ceramic art.
Yeah.
I enjoy collecting plates, ceramic plates of very artistic. Love ceramics, just in all its forms. I do see a lot of connection between the ceramic engineering and the ceramic art. And so this summer, for example, I organized a webinar series that was 2 speakers every session, one a scientist and one an artist. And they were talking about things that they had in common. It was really great.
Yeah.
It was a really great seminar series. Because, by the way, this year is the International Year of Glass, of the United Nations International Year of Glass. And so a lot of this connectivity between the science and the art. The artists rely a lot on the engineers, on the ceramic engineers, in the development of new compositions for art pieces and glazes. It's all very chemistry, by the way, extremely chemistry. And I kind of consider myself not so much an engineer anymore, although I love being an engineer, but more like an applied chemist at this point in time. Because a lot of what we do is the periodic table and thinking about the materials in the elements of the periodic table and how to mix them together into new compositions. Obviously for technology, but also for artistry. Love the periodic table. I loved it since I was in 7th grade. And it's a beautiful thing, by the way. It's like it defines everything that the universe is made of. in this compact little thing. Everyone should have one. Everyone should have one. Should get one, and you should put it, actually, I tell students, you should buy one and put it in front of your bed, the wall in front of your bed. So when you wake up in the morning, that's like the first thing you should see, the periodic table, and then you can say, wow, that's the universe.
The DNA of who we are.
Yes,
yeah.
this
That's
is what the
incredible.
universe is made of.
And everything kind of funnels through that.
Yes.
It builds on that.
Yes,
That's
of
really
course,
beautiful.
bosons and fermions and all of these other things also, but those are like even smaller stuff. The periodic table is like the actual stable things that the universe is made out of.
Sure. That's really beautiful. I love that. It's like the ingredients of who we are
Yeah,
right there. And then how
totally.
do we kind of create a co-laboratory or an experience for our lives, picking and choosing and just
Yes.
having them.
Picking and
To
choosing.
create an experience for who we want to be and how we
Yes.
want to experience our world.
Yes, picking and choosing. You know, what's very interesting about Mars is that there's really very little carbon on the soil in Mars, which of course is mostly what our soil on our planet, you know, our crust is made mostly out of carbon, which is why plants are made out of carbon, we are made out of carbon. Everything is based, it's carbon based. Life is carbon based on our planet. In Mars, the soil is not carbon based, it's silicon based. And so one has to think about what are we going to do if we want to grow crops in Mars, for example. You can't just grab a seed and put it on the soil. It won't grow. There's no carbon. So what is it that you need to do? Those are the kinds of things that I also think about in my research, the elements of the periodic table, and then thinking about Mars and Mars colonization in general, and how are you even going to grow crops in a place like Mars where the soil doesn't have carbon.
You can grow chips, though.
You can grow
Chips,
Yes,
electronic chips,
you
out
can,
of silicon.
You can
Silicon
exactly.
chips.
You can grow semiconductors. Yes, exactly right. It is silicon based, so it's all silicate dirt. And so how do you do that? Turns out that in Mars there's a lot of carbon dioxide. So if you can grab it from the thin atmosphere and then break it apart, then you can produce carbon for
Let's practice here.
this year. Yes.
You can reorganize it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible, amazing, Olivia. Julio, how about your current work project and the research that you're doing?
Going from the extremely high temperatures, we
Yes.
go to extremely low temperatures.
Okay.
From extremely small to a little bit bigger. So and all the periodic table, I only have one atom in particular. So
only one of the boxes?
Only one of the boxes. So I wake up and only look at this strontium.
Strontium.
So we use strontium atoms. We get them very, very cold by different techniques. One of them in the end is just lasers. So we shine, strontium is very hot, jumping around, and we shine photons to it from every direction, so it slows down. Once these atoms are very cold, they're barely moving, they no longer behave like a particle, they are like a wave, and you cannot tell them apart anymore. So they become like a laser, similar to a laser. So what we want to do with this, and in one of the experiments that we do in my lab, is we're all familiar with electronic circuits, wires carrying electrons. There's another generation of circuits made of light on little pipes of glass. It's nano waveguides. And these circuits are really fast. What we want to do is, instead of having electrons or wires or photons in these glass pipes or fibers, is to have circuits of atoms. So instead of electronics, we call it atomtronics. And make devices that are based on moving these matter waves or of strontium atoms. That first, there are some applications. One of them is to make a gyroscope. And it's very relevant here because we have the Navy nearby, and they need gyroscopes for navigation. Usually they use laser gyroscopes, so lasers that they have spools of fiber, kilometers long. They send fiber in two directions, light in two directions, and then if they are going like this, counter-propagating light, and if there's a rotation, one of the light will go farther than the other. By sensing that difference, you can tell there was rotation. So we want to do the same, but with matter waves of strontium atoms in a small chip. And the sensitivity to rotation of these matter waves of atoms is 10 times to the 10 times what you get with light. So even though we cannot make circuits that are kilometers long, okay, we lose a factor of 10 to the 6 or 10, maybe 10 to the 7. A factor of 10 or 100 or 1,000 could be incredible for this navigation. Of course, there is a fundamental aspect to it. When we have these atoms in some infrastructure where we get the atoms to be guided, there's some physics that is not fully understood. And of course, there are gyroscopes you can use for general relativity, etc. But that's one project. The other project that we do is we want to have a race of tweezers and trap atoms, and for ideas along quantum computing. But,
yeah, I'll just call all three of you the high-tech Aztecs. I'll just start with that, yeah? But fascinating, your work is really incredible. I want to know more about it all, of course, but I also want to invite our guests that we have, if they have any questions for you guys. I want to open it up to the room. So please, anybody of our guests have any questions or any things they want to ask our panelists, please.
First of all, thank you all so much for sharing your stories. I wonder how you have time to run research labs that do really great science and engineering projects, and then also have the time to do like EDI and outreach work in the same time of day that other people do, and then only do research. So how do you have time for all of that?
Well, you have to be incredibly organized. This is, I don't think this is any surprise to anybody. You have to have a calendar, and you have to manage your time very effectively. Time management is key. People that are scattered and don't have control over their calendar, they would be very hard pressed to be able to do all the things that need to get done. But if you are disciplined and have control over your schedule, it can be done. Sí se puede.
I will say, just in terms of that and my experience with Olivia, she is great about, I have these days to meet, I have this time to Zoom, I have that. She is very organized, and I really appreciate that. That is part of it. I will just say from yesterday, Stephanie, you were here, and it was so powerful to hear the other panelists talking about not only how they do their work, but also for what you asked them, how they take care of themselves, for the time for themselves, right? Not just for the work or this wonderful EDI work that a lot of them do, but also where's like the me time in that, right? Whether it's family or whether it's, for Rami, it was like, she does running and just things that, she talks about, she mentioned, like, actually put it in my calendar. I block out of time for me, and my grad students see that, and it's like, that's dedicated for that. So it's about, like what you're talking about, Olivia, organizing it.
I do the same.
Yeah.
If I want to go to see the next Avengers movie, which I do whenever it comes out, I have to figure out when it's going to come out, and then I have to put it in my calendar. Yeah. And I do. I put it in my calendar. It's like, oh yeah, I planned, I'm going to the movies. Always in Tijuana, by the way. I don't go to the movies here.
Yeah, I love it.
I go to Tijuana.
I also just say, in terms of that question that you're asking, Stephanie, it is important for us, just in terms of the context of UC San Diego and Olivia, maybe your experience, and Julio and Javier, of, there is a lot of us asked of us as Latinx and Chicanx faculty members, because of our dedication to everything we're talking about, our communities, and setting seeds in the work that we want to do for the next generations. And so there is a lot of things asked of us, and we ask of ourselves. The university, we're a lot of committees, our opinions and our voices are really invited into conversations. And so that is, I would say, a strain, because it's wonderful to be part of those conversations and to have a place at the table, as they say, but it does take time. And so I think what you're asking is really important, to know that we do have to have our own self-care, as they say now, right? And to take care of a space in our calendars to go see the Avengers movie, or Javier, you're into running as well. Yes, I know that, and I know I think Julio's working on his surfing, perhaps, right?
I'm a cyclist.
What's that?
I'm a cyclist.
The cyclist, exactly. That's right. You mentioned that to me. But I'll just say, to make sure that there's things for you, and maybe we can talk about that. Maybe on a personal level, what is it that you do for fun? Javier, please.
Yeah, besides running, actually, my wife and I and a couple friends are signed up for a marathon relay in the next year that we did last year. It was a lot of fun. Also, we have 2 dogs. One is a rescued greyhound, and the other is a rescued super mutt. She's you know, a little bit of everything. Yeah, we just like to take them to, you know, dog parks or the dog beach. There's actually a dog surfing competition. I don't know if you've seen that. Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, surfing is an equal opportunity sport.
Yeah,
Yes, I hear
exactly.
that.
Yeah, take them on hikes, you know, the parks, and that's like, yeah, really fun.
Awesome. And Olivia, besides Avengers on your calendars, movies, cinema, anything else that is like really special, like, you know, your me time, that is something that maybe we don't know about you, that is like something that you just are passionate about?
I love cooking.
Yeah? So what's your dish? What's your specialty?
I have this quite unique kind of tomato stew that I make that is my own little special. My family loves it. They keep wanting me to give them the recipe, but I'm not going to.
You're being stingy.
Being
A lot of
stingy.
research into it.
Yes, there's a lot of research. I have figured out that the reason I like cooking is because it's like material science. You're like mixing things in certain amounts.
It's your periodic table, except with different ingredients.
Yes, exactly.
That's incredible.
So that is, and I have a lot of friends on both sides of the border. So a lot of the going to dinner in Tijuana, which the food is awesome, with friends.
That's really great. Didn't know that it just comes down to people ultimately and relationships, foundation of who we are, whether it's our family or whether it's colleagues or you know, friends in the world, for sure. Yeah. Julio, how about you? Cycling.
No, well, I have a 7-year-old, so that's my hobby.
That's where you want to spend your time.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
Absolutely.
I want to spend my time, and it's incredible to see how they learn things on their own. You think you're gonna teach them things? No. She was reading before I could teach. She was walking before I could show her. No, I do cycling, so which I embed when I commute to campus. Like cycle.
So I know you live in Del Mar, so you commute?
I don't live in Del Mar, but close by.
Oh, sorry.
No, I don't surf, so I just cycle from there to here, and that's 20-30 minutes, good uphill.
So you save on parking here on campus then?
Yeah.
Good for you.
I cycle. I'm very competitive too, so I cycle with some of the champions here in town. There are some who are the best in the country. With the father of the Olympic winner of cyclists here in San Diego. Yeah, it's. I started that when I was living in Illinois.
The cycling experience.
Champaign-Urbana, there's nothing around, other cornfields, soyfields.
Yeah.
Trying to get away, I guess.
Amazing, fantastic. I'll open up again. Any other questions in the room? Yeah? If not, maybe we'll end our conversation. Oh, here, sorry, please.
No worries. I'm taking an intro to Chicanx and Latinx literature, and one of the things we're focusing on right now is like influences, like big influences, like in music and in writing, and like because we're like, you know, like analyzing the lyrics and stuff. So I was wondering if you guys had like any like specific figures, not specifically in music or writing, that you like looked up to, that you like felt like inspired by or like connected to in your journeys. Yeah.
Yeah, I have one. There's a Junot Díaz book, The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde. That one, I think must have read in college. Must have come out when I was in college or something. He was actually a professor at MIT, so like, but his class was always overbooked. Like you couldn't possibly take the writing class with him. But I really, that story really resonated with me because it's like about. You know, a kid that comes, you know, from a Latin American country to the U.S. at a young age, and the difficulty of straddling two cultures, and maybe like not being enough of one culture and not being enough of the other culture, and so being stuck in the middle, which I think is just a really shared experience with a lot of kids that grow up, you know, from other places. And yeah, so and it's a really great book, and the writing's obviously like excellent. So
yeah, it's a great book. I love it too. Awesome.
Yeah, I always loved realismo mágico, magic realism. I grew up with it. I don't think it's any surprise. I love Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I have read his novels many times. And of course, Cien Años de Soledad is a classic. The magic of it, I think, is really awesome to me. I love it. And this is why I like Avengers and Star Wars and Star Trek also, because it's like science fiction, right? It's magical and fantasy. And I like that. I like the whole concept. So Realismo Mágico is definitely something that I like. And there are several authors. Gabriel Garcia Marquez is one of them that I really, truly enjoy. And on music, of course, the music that becomes important to us is the one that we listen to when we're teenagers. Then that becomes our music. And so for me, it was Miguel Bosé, Mecano, Timbiriche, Luis Miguel, and Soda Stereo. That's my music.
That's your jams.
That's my jams.
Woo, go
That's my
Olivia.
music.
What's your playlist?
Same generation.
Same
I
generation.
love it.
That's our
We need that
music.
playlist, Olivia. Awesome. Julio.
Yeah, she was saying what I was going to say.
Ah.
Cien Años de Soledad, Garcia Marquez, and in music.
Realismo Mágico
Yeah,
is also
it's all these characters that are, it's
magical.
magical, yeah.
Yeah. But also formalistically, it's very exciting as well, right? It's inside it, but how it ends is like before your very fingers, it evaporates, right? It's an extraordinary form for me. What's really thrilling about that book as well, besides just the incredible, butterflies that come out and the kind of, like you say, the amazing things that happen that we know from magical realism in that form of literature, but just the form is so, in a weird way, kind of holding hands with you as the high-tech Aztec scientists, investigators, innovators. That book is also innovative just formalistically. We're kind of holding hands with what you guys are doing as well as, discoverers and explorers to these planets, to these worlds, searching for truth, beauty, and, for things that will enlighten our progress as human beings.
Yeah, and it also connects to like fate and like inevitability and determinism. And these are things that like in physics are really like, I remember reading that book and thinking like it's really connected to like, fundamental physics actually. So it's cool. Yeah,
Amazing.
There's so many ways to interpret that.
Yeah, it has so many kind of threads and lenses to how to frame the book, for sure. That's incredible. Yeah. Awesome. Any other questions, please? If not, like I said, this is in our final minutes. Maybe I'll just start with you, Julio, and go down our panel. Just maybe sharing what gives you pride in your Latinx community. Maybe in your own personal life, here on campus. Just, I'm just really want us to end on a celebration of this is Latinx Heritage Month, and part of the theme that we're trying to imbue during this month, and this is something the panel is, I was very conscious of inviting Mexicanos, Chicanos, but also other Latinos that are part of our theme this year, which is Unidos, right, building a stronger community. So I'm just trying to celebrate all those wonderful Latino brothers and sisters that we have in our Latinx Heritage Month celebration. I'm just curious from your point of view, sharing some thoughts about just that, what gives you pride in your Latinx community?
Yeah, maybe my fellow panel members, like the grit and the crossing the border every day, like these things, I think that makes me proud. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Determination, resilience, as Stephanie invited us to consider yesterday.
Yeah.
Awesome. Olivia?
I don't know how to answer that question quite. I am very proud of being a Latina that has managed to get into engineering, at the high levels of academia. And I think that I am proud of the heroes that I have encountered in the process of me doing that. Some that I've never met that are examples to me, and some that I have and that have helped me. And the capacity to say, I am going to reach out and extend my hand and bring you up. And I think that we do a good job of that. Some of my heroes are Cesar Chavez, Si Se Puede. And Eleanor Roosevelt, I think, is amazing. So I take example from her.
Awesome.
She also was the one that reached out and pulled people from poverty and from discrimination. And she was amazing. So take example from that.
I love that you're going just beyond our own community and embracing. I teach, my teatro. I teach Chicano teatro and also teach Chicano dramatic literature on campus. And on the first day of class, I always ask the quiz. It's really hard. Question number 1, your name, right? It's like really simple in the end. But the big ticket item is, what's your definition of Chicano? And what do we really realize at the end of the conversation is everyone has access to that worldview, to those philosophical thoughts, and to those ideas of actions and love in action. What you're talking about, besides just your DNA, right? What side of the border you live on or what your community is. It's a radically inclusive gesture for everyone to participate in through that heroism and through that commitment to those values and putting them into concrete actions, what you're just describing, for sure.
I mean, this is why my Enlace program is here. This is why I started this program, because to me, it's like the connecting people and getting them to interact from both sides of the border. I say that the most honest friendships is the ones that you make when you're 17 years old, and they are based on the fact that you like each other. That's the only reason you're friends.
Yeah.
And so I think that in the future president of the U.S. and the future president of Mexico are going to be alum of the Enlace program, and they're going to be friends since they were 17 years old. That changes the world.
I love it.
It tears down walls.
Awesome. More of that, Olivia. Thank you. Julio, how about you?
Yeah, definitely. As you mentioned, unidos, being together, grit, have the effort to work together and help each other. I think this unidos sí se puede, and ayudándonos, it's key for, and what it's really makes me proud of our community.
Awesome. Well, I'm personally proud to know each of you and to spend this time with you and to build more relationships and more friendships and deeper, just collegial, but more than that, just to know each other as human beings. I'm really, really honored and super thrilled to get to know Julio. You've been so great in the past year. Olivia, such a dear friend. And Javier, I'm really excited to become part of your orbit, as they say. And I invite everyone to watch yesterday's conversation as well that we had. And I know you guys all know them as well, those 3 that we had yesterday. So it's just been a real privilege these past couple days to just spend time with you and to be part of your journey and to actually share that in my role with CLS with our audience members. And look forward to more. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Awesome.